Welcome on Texas Football. Time for State of the Program, brought to you by our friend Adam Lowy over at the Lowy Law Firm. I'm Bobby Burton, joined by CJ Vogel and Gerry Hamilton of On Texas Football. Guys, this week's State of the Program, I thought we would look, if y'all don't mind, at what Texas has accomplished in the portal overall, and then maybe compare it to a year ago and what Texas brought in the portal. Now, Texas so far this year, just high big picture oriented. Texas has brought in 10 guys so far in the portal, 5 in the winter, and now 5 in the spring portal period. 2 what I would call specialty people, 1 kicker, 1 punter, a wide receiver, a tight end, 5 defensive tackle types, rotational guys, and linebacker Brad Spence / edge player. By comparison, a year ago, okay, so that's 10 total so far. By comparison, a year ago, Gerry and CJ, Texas went with 1 running back. It was a late addition, Velton Gardner. Remember him? He wasn't even there until Cedric Baxter's injury. 3 wide receivers last year, Golden, Bond, and Bolden. 1 tight end in Amari Niblack. 3 defensive linemen, 1 edge with Trey Moore. Kendrick Blackshear was a one-time transfer, then transferred out almost immediately. And then you had Andrew Makuba at safety and Javion Cole at corner. Y'all look at these 2 classes. Let's talk about this, if you don't mind. What do you think of what Texas has done thus far in the portal overall and how it matches with this team? Let's start with that. Gerry, I'll ask you, how has Texas done overall in the portal, combining both the winter and spring at this point?
Yeah, so, I mean, obviously it's revisionist history in a weird way, but I think they have more starters, for sure starters this year in the portal. I'm not saying they're going to have Matthew Golden, who'll be a first-round pick, or Isaiah Bond, which should have been second, third-round pick. Makuba going to be a third-round pick. But I think they have more for sure starters in this group. And that's because you have 2 specialists who are coming in and taking over roles, right? Jack injuries, pretty good chance he starts at tight end. Emmett Mosley, pretty good chance he starts at receiver. Brad Spence, starter-level player, but probably will start some games. Cole Brevard, going to start over the ball. Then you have Travis Shaw, you have Hero Canoe, you have Murad Watson and Levon Johnson. There's a decent chance you're going to get more players out of this portal class that start games at Texas over the course of the season versus last year. Now, will they be drafted as high? Are they going to tear up the combine in the same way? I don't know. All-Americans? I don't know. But Texas has filled this 2024-2025 team with more starters out of the portal.
CJ, I hear what Gerry's saying because Texas did get 4 starters. Sorry about this. Texas did get 4 starters from last year. Golden, Bond, and Bond, obviously at receiver, Trey Moore, and Andrew Makuba. Do you see Texas actually getting more than 4 starters out of this group? Because Lole and Norton, I think, were key pieces of that. Yeah. They really played some key minutes. But really 4 starters out of this group. Do you see Texas getting 4 starters in this group of portal transfers?
I do, and I think that comes even without including the specialists, right? We can put them to the side, and I mean, of course, with Jack Bomeister coming in, you have Mason Shipley now. It's their jobs in the specialist room. But even beyond that, if you don't have Alfred Collins or Vernon Broughton, some veteran guys on that defensive line, in which are already bringing in 5 new guys, you could pencil in 2 or 3 to start already, right? How do they battle with Alex January? That'll create the 4-man rotation in my eyes amongst the portalers. But you got starters on that side of the ball. Texas very young at wide receiver. We've seen what it's like already when they don't have a Ryan Wingo and a DeAndre Moore out there on the field. Emmett Mosley's been there and done that, right? He set several Stanford records his freshman campaign. I would assume the minute he learns the offense, or at least one position in that offense, he'll be in the starting 11 as well. And then Jack injuries with over 1,000 yards in 2 seasons. Look, there's your 4.5 starters already. And then you could talk about fits against specific schemes, right? Does a Brad Spence start specific games depending on who Texas plays and what they like to do, running the football or loading a heavy box? That'll be interesting in my eyes as well, but I love it. I think Texas has addressed several needs, and we're going to talk about it here, but they've done it setting up for multiple years. I think they wanted to do that last year with a Matthew Golden, but who would have expected him to become a top 25 pick this weekend in the NFL draft? That was a guy, looking back, that I was expecting, okay, he's going to stick around in Austin for 2 years.
Yeah.
But this level of play in this offense, and of course the competition level, if you strike gold with a kid, you never know when their time to the NFL might come early.
So let me put this out there to you guys. Like, I'm looking at it. I think Emmett Mosley is a starter. I think that's very likely. I think Jack Indries is a starter. So at wide receiver, tight end, those guys are going to start. In my opinion, I think Cole Brevard is likely a starter at defensive tackle. I think Alex January is going to compete with all those other guys to be a starter. So I don't know if they got 2 starters at defensive tackle. I definitely think they got 4 rotational guys
at
defensive tackle, if that makes sense. Brad Spence is kind of that outlier because we've heard behind the scenes he's had a whale of a spring training. Gerry and I both have heard that from multiple sources, and he's just a physical presence. Sark talked about him a little bit yesterday to you guys, CJ, as well. But my point being, Mosley, Indries, and Brevard are the 3 guys I think are going to for sure start. So that's versus 4 last year. But then if you add in the specialists, Bowmeister and Shipley, you get to 5. You could say Silas Bolden started at punt return last year, though.
Yeah.
My point is, I think we're picking nits a little bit between these 2 classes. I think the bigger piece for me is that in both of these instances, they filled their needs. Remember last year, the need was defensive tackle and wide receiver. So what did Texas go out and do? They got a first-round wide receiver and probably a second or third-round wide receiver. Now, it wasn't the 2 that they expected to weave in between there, but they did that. And then they got the defensive tackles to kind of fill in around Vernon Broughton and Alfred Collins, to your point, CJ. This year, they didn't have any of those guys coming back. Only Alex January had any time. So they had to even go heavier in the portal at defensive tackle. They successfully did that. They needed a tight end, and they needed a wide receiver. And a punter. Average 45 yards a boot. I think they just addressed the needs really, really well. And I mean that from a standpoint of, look, you're only as strong as your weakest link on a football team, right? That's just the way the world works. They've addressed every single one of those needs, and I still think they could do more in the portal. I don't know that it's going to be coming here in the next 48 hours. But I don't think the portal is closed for the University of Texas. All right, we want to get into some other stuff real quick. Gerry, I know, has something he wants to say about this. But first, I need to say thank you to our sponsor. Each and every state of the program brought to you by our friend Adam Lowy over at the Lowy Law Firm. Visit them at loweylawfirm.com. They have more than 20 years of experience helping injured Texans. If you've been involved in a car wreck, truck wreck, automobile accident of any kind, including a motorcycle, ATV, or 18-wheeler, give Adam and his group a shout. They will give you a free, no strings attached consultation to let you understand your rights and whether or not they think you might be due some level of compensation for that injury. Again, loweylawfirm.com. Thank you, Adam. Gerry, I'm going to give you the floor because it was clear you wanted to say something.
Yeah, I did. I think on D-line, what's interesting is this is kind of the way I look at the portal is like, okay, if Texas doesn't go to after a defensive back in the portal, then they really like their young talent. That's a very positive thing for multiple years. And when I look at D-line, if Alex January, and maybe it doesn't matter who starts on some level, but it matters to kids, right? They know they're going to play and you compete. If Alex January holds off guys and starts next year, then that is, and I've heard he's had a good spring. That is great for him. Because I'm here to tell you, Murad Watson's a starter level player.
Right.
Cole Brevard's a starter level player. And Murad Watson was a freshman All-American, and Alex January wasn't. If Alex January holds those guys off, that's a great, great sign for the type of NFL prospect I think Alex January is about to become. Because Murad Watson is that, I mean, that pickup's underrated. He's a freshman All-American, man.
Yeah. I agree. I think this is one thing that we need to then talk about. Okay. So of all those guys last year, 12 of them, only one of them is going to have a multi-year impact at Texas, and that's Trey Moore.
Yeah.
Okay. This is where these two portal classes can separate from one another, in my opinion. At Texas, here are the likely multi-year guys for Texas. Emmett Mosley, he's only going to be a true sophomore. He has to have another year coming back. Jack Indries, the tight end, could be a multi-year guy. Levon Johnson from Maryland is only a redshirt sophomore, I believe. Murad Watson, only a true sophomore. He's a guy that's got 2 more years. And then Brad Spence. I mean, the difference in these two portal classes is that last year you got one guy in Trey Moore that could be multi-year, or that ended up being multi-year. You could get 5 guys that are multi-year guys in this class. What do you think of that, CJ?
Yeah, on top of that, I mean, when you combine it with what exported out of the program, you didn't lose as many starts or guys who had career starts, right? So the pure number of 2 deep remains pretty firm on top of what is already building for 2025 and 2026. So it's all coming together for what should be an all chips in the middle situation with Arch Manning as your quarterback. I know, Bobby, you've talked about that on ontexasfootball.com. I know that that's been echoed throughout the Texas fan base, but when it comes to a window, quote unquote, as a general manager, as someone building a team, to know that you have the pieces in place, especially at a quarterback or a veteran offensive line, wherever you feel like the most important spots on the field are, if you feel like you have that and you don't go out and at least find ways to build the most complete team around it, you've done yourself a disservice. And I think that's the complete opposite of what Texas has done so far. They've gone out, made sure every stone has been turned, and made sure that whatever pieces they feel can help this team win, not just this year, but potentially in 2026 should Arch return for that year as well. And I know, Gerry, you've mentioned that several times. Look, you're setting up yourself for some continuity for 2 years in a row that otherwise Texas hasn't necessarily had at a number of these key positions. We're seeing portal additions in already this offseason.
I want to say this too. Like when I was we were just thinking about this during this conversation. Trey Moore was a really solid player on a college football playoff team last year. Started every game, right?
Yep.
What happens if Brad Spence is better? Brad Spence was arguably better in the SEC last year than Trey Moore was, and now he's at Texas.
I'll push back on that a little bit.
I mean, I hear you, but 54 tackles, 4.5 sacks. I mean, he was a productive player in less games. What happens if he's actually better? That's what happens if Murad Watson's better than Vernon, because I think he's going to be.
Mm-hmm.
Long term.
Next year, Bobby. Next year, he was a freshman All-American. He had 20 tackles in his last 5 games, like against Miami and bowl game. And I'm not sure they didn't get better players.
Just better overall. Interesting. All right. Hey, I think we've dissected the portal. What I want to do next with you guys, second half of this state of the program, I want to get our final prognostications on what round you think Texas players are going to go in the NFL draft. And I'm going to go from quarterback over to DB in that kind of order. Okay. And you can say a little piece on them if you want to, but let's just start with Quinn Ewers.
Yeah.
I think we've all read everything from he's going to be a bust to we think he's a solid number 2 quarterback to he'll go in the 2nd round, 3rd round, 5th round, 7th round. We've all heard it. End of the day, where do y'all see Quinn Ewers going? And we're going to go like that and talk about the rest of the roster. Just give me a quick prognostication. I would say I'm going Quinn Ewers 5th round. I'll put it out there.
I was going to say 5th round, and if he doesn't get quicker feet and reactive body quickness in the NFL, he won't make it.
Okay, CJ.
I like 3rd round. His round for me, his grade for me is kind of one of those. You take the scoring out of a diving competition, you take the good and the bad, you race them, and you kind of go with the median. And I think the 3rd round is basically where I've seen the most predictions for him.
Okay, good stuff. All right, let's stay with you, CJ, and go to Jaden Blue next. That's 5th, 3rd for Quinn Ewers. I'll keep track here a little bit for us.
I've got a 4th round grade for Jaden Blue. I think the speed of what he showed at the pro day will carry a lot of kind of those red flags about his hands and fumbling issues.
What about you, Gerry?
I think the speed will get him drafted up there. I don't necessarily think he's that good because he's not an NFL runner. And I think, is good. I've always said the guy's got great hands, but it didn't necessarily show this year. He had too many drops for me.
So what round?
I think he'll go in the 4th though because of the speed. I don't know if he's that level player though.
Yeah, I'm gonna go with y'all. I'm gonna say 4th or 5th. I think they just take a flyer on him because you can't duplicate speed.
Yeah,
I mean the young man scored 14 touchdowns for Texas last year. I mean they pay for that in the NFL.
That's right.
So 4th, 5th round though, because to Jerry's point, I think he's more of a flyer running back. I don't think he's an every down back for you. Matthew Golden, 1st round. Everybody agree?
Yes.
Gerry, CJ. Okay. Let's go to the next one. Isaiah Bond. I'm going to go 2nd round for Isaiah Bond. I know all of the negative reports out there about him, but I don't think you duplicate speed at that position. And he has, when healthy, been a very productive receiver. CJ, you go next.
I've got 3rd round. I think that there's just a little bit too much of a concern in terms of him as a football player, person, whatever you want to talk about, especially with that legal situation over his head. I think that drops him quite a bit.
Gerry, what do you got? I got 2nd. CJ's got 3rd.
I got 2nd round talent. I'm not sure he gets drafted.
Woo! That would.
They don't like the answers. If they don't get the answers they want, I'm not sure he gets drafted.
Wow.
We've seen it happen to other guys before.
Move on to tight end. You're right. That's why we're kind of prognosticating here. We don't know for sure, right? But I will say, all it takes is one of 32 to fall in love with you. To go undrafted would be difficult. Gunnar Helm. No bigger glue piece to this Texas team in 2024, in my opinion. He kind of segued that JT Sanders position and kind of took it and made it his own in 2024. Y'all's thoughts on where he goes? Does he sneak into? Apparently, this is a good tight end draft, by the way.
Yeah.
Which I think will impact his ranking and may actually take some guys off the board sooner and then make him more valuable a little bit later. 3rd, 4th round seems to be the consensus on him. I'm going to go 4th round for Gunnar Helm. Gerry?
I'll go late 3rd on him. I think he just checks so many boxes for teams.
Yeah. Low risk.
Yeah. And look, there's questions blocking, but I'm going to go late 3rd, early 4th. Either one wouldn't surprise me.
Yeah, I've got the 4th, and I'll call my shot. He's going to the Jets. He's going to be a Jets, Jets. Enjoy New York.
I love it. Next up, Kelvin Banks. I think we can all say 1-1-1.
Yeah.
We even need to discuss it. The question is whether or not he's top 10 or top 25, like some people have him predicted. Yeah. I tell you what, if he falls to the Kansas City Chiefs at like 20, whatever, they're just the luckiest franchise of all time.
The Texans will not let that happen, Bobby.
Okay. Well, let's hope not. That's all I can say. Cam Williams, a little bit different. He would not have went in the draft if they thought he was going to go outside the 3rd round, but most things I see now have him going 4th or even 5th. Where are y'all's thoughts on Cam Williams? I would probably say 4th at this point, based not necessarily on what I think of his future is or potential, but based on what other prognosticators that actually cover the draft are saying. Yeah. CJ?
You really have to look at his first 12 games of work, and that's about it. Because you didn't get a combine, you didn't get a pro day out of him. I know he was dinged up against Ohio State, so throw basically that last game out the window, and that's what you're judging off of. And it's only those 12 games. But through about 8 or 9 of those, we were saying, it could be a top 40 pick, right? There is enough on tape so far, especially in the SEC, for him to go as early as a top 30, top 40, top 50 pick. I think he's a 3rd round guy. I think that's where he'll hear it. But hey, he didn't have any postseason, works out for any of these teams. Does that knock him? I don't think so. 3rd round for me.
It's going to be a replica of high school. He'll probably go in the late 3rd or early 4th, and then we'll look back on it and say, y'all were wrong. He's better than that.
I love it. Hayden Connor, 6th or 7th round flyer for somebody for me. He's one of those guys that's going to have to find a place. Yeah. I thought it was interesting at Pro Day. He was snapping the football.
Yes, very.
That may be his future. Gerry, what do you think?
Free agent. I'll go free agent, and it will be as a center.
CJ?
Played a lot of football at the University of Texas. That doesn't go for naught. I think he gets drafted, but it's one of those last, compensatory picks in the 7th round.
6th, 7th. So 7th, you said? Okay. Mm-hmm. Fair enough. Gerry, CJ, you start us off with Jake Majors, young man that started more games in Texas football history than anyone.
That means something to me. 57 career starts at Texas. Look, say what you want about Jake as a offensive lineman, as a center, whatever. Playing a lot of football at the University of Texas, that carries weight in the NFL. We've seen players get drafted for much less who ended up playing at Texas. I got a 5th round for Jake. I think that there's just a lot of film that indicates there's something there that you can work towards with him as a backup center kind of role situation.
5th round is big, especially because I think consensus have him going 6, 7 to even undrafted right now. So that. Yeah, I like where you're going. I went 6th round because that's usually when some centers go off the board. I feel like, you know what I mean? Gerry, what do you think, bud?
Yeah, I could go either way. I'll go 6th round just because he's a center, but I do think he'll get drafted for the reason CJ says, and he checks a lot of boxes for people.
Gerry, start with Alfred Collins for us, if you don't mind.
I'm going to say 2nd round. And if Alfred will ever just go out and maximize his talent, he'll look like a 1st rounder in 3 years.
CJ?
I like back into 2nd round, early 3rd. Again, a guy that didn't get to work out a whole lot in the combine pro days. So does that knock him? Look, athleticism, size are there.
Yeah, if he would have been able to work out at pro day and not been injured, I was hopeful that he might be able to squeak into the 1st round, the back end, because physically, he's always had the tools. I think he finally put it all together this past season. And kind of like Tavondre Sweat, finally put it all together. And that last season had a terrific first year for the Titans. I'm gonna put 2nd on him. And I think that he's maybe the sleeper of this Texas draft. Maybe this is a guy that could have a 10, 12-year NFL career if he really goes after it and loves football. Vernon
by the way, the best case scenario for him of all time would be getting drafted by Kansas City late in the 1st round and work under Chris Jones for a couple of years and learn how to do it.
Yep. Yeah. That's an approximation for him.
Yeah.
I mean, that's not they were very similar players in high school, Gerry. Very similar. Vernon Broughton, a little bit different. This is where I'm going to go 6th, 7th round. I know that defensive linemen tend to have very positive, I don't want to put it. The NFL likes big bodies, and they will take them to make sure they have enough on the lines. But I think 6th, 7th round, I actually went 7th with Vernon in my prognostication. CJ, what do you got?
I've got a 6 for Vernon, and again, he's got the biggest hands of any defensive lineman. He's got the longest arms of any defensive lineman in the draft this year. That's going to carry some weight, but does that overcome what is rather a below average lower body build? I think is something that's going to have to even out. 6th round feels about right for him.
Yeah, I was going to say 6th round as well. He just doesn't have – he has the length and he has the hand size, all that. He doesn't have the ideal build those guys look for. And I do think I think he may be a little better player than that, but I just don't think, these guys are looking for warts.
Sticking with you, Gerry, Barron Sorrell. I think
he's all over the board.
This is a very interesting pick, right? Because he plays really well, and he had a great Senior Bowl. Where do you go with Barron Sorrell? What's your projection at this point?
I'm going to say 5th round, and I'm not sure I'm even close on this. I'm going to say 5th round for a lot of the reasons that we talked about with Jake Majors, but Barron Sorrell's a higher level player. I think I think there's going to be some meetings with some GMs and their scouting department, and scouting guys are going to say, we want this guy as part of our program.
Like that.
Well put. CJ?
Yeah, we talk about guys who didn't get a chance to help themselves because of injuries in the Senior Bowl, the Pro Day, the Combine. Barron Sherrill absolutely helped himself. He's the defensive line MVP of the East team or West team, whatever it was, down in Mobile. I actually got to sit there and watch him firsthand. He was throwing, SEC defensive line or offensive linemen in one-on-one reps. That strength, I think, is something that is going to help him be elevated. 4th round for me. And again, I don't know if he was ever that high during the season, but because the way he's going to interview, or I guess the way he did interview and the way that he kind of carried himself in this postseason, previews for the draft, 4th round's probably the peak. And I think he hit the peak at the right time.
I'll go, man. I may split the difference with you guys because he's in that 100 to 130 range for me, which is 4th, 5th round.
Yeah.
I get it. I would probably say 5 to be on the safe side, but I do think he's going to get drafted. Some people have him not being drafted at all.
That's crazy.
I can't see that based on production and ability. Jahdae Barron, 1st round, everybody. It's kind of a given.
Top 10
winner. All right, Andrew Makuba. A lot of teams apparently very high on him behind the scenes. But how high? Safeties aren't a priority in the NFL in a draft, right? And he's undersized a little bit, even though he throws his body around like crazy, man. The consensus seems to be 3rd round. Could you see him sneaking any higher? Do you see him dropping? CJ, you're nodding your head. I'm going to let you go first. I'm going to say 3rd round.
I'm sneaking him into that back end of the second. The second round goes to about 70 picks this year. Look, if he can sneak in there, I think that's a big shot. I actually think that he has a better shot to sneak up than anybody else in this Texas class.
So what happens is the teams that are winners draft winners. I think Andrew Makuba
ended that round.
I think if I could see Makuba going in the 3rd round, I think he's going to outplay his draft status if that happens. But I could see one of these championship level teams, organizations saying, "Let's take this guy at the end of the 2nd round. He's our guy."
Yep.
All right. Any thoughts on any of the non-drafted or non-combine invites? Silas Bolden, David Benda. Anybody think they get drafted, either of them?
I don't think they get drafted, but I wouldn't be surprised if David Benda wasn't a priority undrafted free agent for a few teams. I think that there was enough there shown at times, especially coming up for teams in the AFC North that play that kind of physical offensive line, defensive line style of football. To get a linebacker that can hit, run fit, and really play near the line of scrimmage, I think there's going to be some value for him, but I don't think he hears his name called on Saturday.
The way he runs could also help on special teams. Gerry, what about Silas Bolden? Any thoughts on that?
I think undrafted free agent. We'll see if he sticks. If not, he'll be a star in the Canadian Football League. But what about the corner? He had a great pro day.
Gavin Holmes, yeah.
Gavin Holmes is a sleeper. I'm not saying he'll get drafted, but man, when you have a combine like that, or a pro day like that, if somebody takes a flyer at the end, it wouldn't shock me.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Good stuff, guys. 3 first-round picks, 2 to 3 second-round picks, and then just a list of guys in the 3rd, 4th, and 5th, it looks like, for the Longhorns. All right, that's going to do it. We'll have more for you guys later today on Football Theory, as well as the live stream tonight at 7 o'clock. See if any recruiting news has broken. But thank you once again to our sponsor, Adam Lowy, over at the Lowy Law Firm. If you've been injured in a car wreck, truck wreck, automobile accident of any kind, make sure you give Adam and his group a call. LowyLawFirm.com. They will give you a free, no strings attached consultation to tell you whether or not they believe you might be due compensation. All right, for Gerry Hamilton, for CJ Vogel, as well as our producer, Matt Hutchinson, I'm Bobby Burton. You guys have a good day. Hook 'em.